What's up, people? My name is Shaggy, the opinionated hippie. I recently received a comment on a recent video, recently, that comment right there, um, because I am undergoing isolation due to COVID, though thankfully I'm not feeling any of the sort of physical effects, though I am in sort of a weird mental fog, but I don't know whether that is because of the isolation or the COVID or whatever. But that being the case, after I received that comment, I was like, well, why don't we do a quick dive into the John Lennon solo albums? So that's all this is, my ranking of John Lennon's solo albums. And only his solo albums, not the ones that he did with Yoko Ono, because I have better things to say about those albums. And I also want to give Yoko more props than I'm ready to right now. So this is just about the four solo albums that he released. He actually released five, but the fifth one, the last one he released, was a covers album of like 50s and 60s tracks. I don't think it was the most inspired thing. One, I kind of just generally don't like cover albums in general. This was a pretty uninspired covers album, and I would have nothing positive to say about it other than Lennon's voice, maybe. But yeah, so these are just the four that he recorded under his own name. The one of them is John Lennon Plastic Ono Band. But then Yoko Ono has a companion album, Yoko Ono Plastic Ono Band. So this does seem like a legit John Lennon solo album. But anyways, yeah. So that's all I'm gonna do is that. And I do want to say that this will be obvious as the rankings occur, or will now be obvious what the rankings are after I say this. I think his solo albums clearly tell the tale of a man whose music was driven by emotion and just raw, unbridled passion. And the farther he gets away from that, and as he matures and kind of exercises his demons out in a variety of ways, and maybe doesn't have an interest in music as he did before, or doesn't have anything to say, but he feels compelled to make music, like the albums just get like empty and like just like but when you go back earlier in time and you realize he's still really angry about things, he is able to like turn those emotions into some of the most powerful music, and it's the simplest music of his career. And as he goes on in time, the music gets way more complicated, but the songs just get so empty. And it isn't until he kind of celebrates his love in the best way possible towards the end of his career that he kind of refines that passion again. But I think it's clearly told in the tale of these albums, like what he was going through just as a person. For all that's been written and said about Lennon, that's my interpretation of these four albums. The fifth, Rock and Roll, being like, hey, I'm just gonna cover other people because like I don't even know what to say anymore. So I'm just gonna like sing other people's words. It's a clear trajectory, interesting trajectory. Not praising it or condemning it one way or the other, but I think that albums clearly tell that tale. Anyways, on to number four of four. Number four, Walls and Bridges. This came out in 1974. It was the fourth solo album. It's just bad, I would say. The production kind of sounds like a Leo Sayer type vibe. You make me feel like dancing. I think that was Leo Sayer. But it's just really kind of empty, overproduced 70s. Like if the 80s problem was their production was just so like sterile and just the sounds were horrible and it had that just, the 80s sound. The 70s problem was, hey, let's throw in some strings or some horns, really weakly arranged, but the presence of horns enough is good. Percussion for no reason at all. It's just there were so many unnecessary sounds and none of them are that well arranged or thought out. It reminds me of Bob Dylan in the 80s, where like Dylan seemed kind of lost and like whatever producer produced him, like was the direction the sound of that album went. And Dylan was providing what we have discovered are some pretty good songs, but they were just produced so poorly that it was like bad. And I think at the core of some of these songs, there's something kind of good here. Scared is pretty interesting. Stealing Glass had a working man's hero vibe. There were a couple kind of neat little songs, but the production just kills them, and it just ultimately kind of sounds empty and just pointless. So yeah, I think this is a really, really rough album. And every time something good's about to happen, a production decision is made, or like they're like, hey, wait, let's throw in some horns right here. No, don't. As the first album on this list will clearly illustrate. But yeah, number four, Walls, and I can't remember what the name of this album is. Walls and Bridges. I just, yeah, it's not good. If it wasn't John Lennon, I think it immediately would have been forgotten. Like, just would be one of those things that occurred once. I don't know. Yeah, on to number three. Number three, Mind Games. This came out in 1973. And my opinion of this album, I think, is clearly captured in the title. The title of the album reflects what I think is going on here. Whereas number four, the last album, it really was like pretty horrible, pretty weak album. And but as you like peel away the layers, you're like, oh, but there was some kind of good John Lennon like quality writing in here. This album, I think you walk away thinking, okay, not a great album, but there's some good John Lennon quality writing here. But then when you like actually listen to the songs over and over and over again, you're like, yeah, but like, what is he really saying? Like Mind Games. Mind Games is a strong opening track. It's the title track, obviously. But when all is said and done, like, I'm not really sure what he's really saying. It doesn't seem to be driven by something that he's really angry about as much as it's driven by something that he like is smart enough to write a clever song about. So it comes away kind of clever. But that's my takeaway of it. So while I think this is a much better album than the one that he will make after this, it is a big drop off from the two that preceded this, and it does seem like he's starting to become John Lennon the artist. Or, John Lennon, this is what I do as an artist, is I make this kind of music. And so there does seem to be a little something a little color by numbers by this. There are some good moments, but again, weird moments like tight as a money sign for the S. Kind of a funky little song, but like ultimately for a guy who's known for saying something so passionately, I'm not really sure what the point of the song is. There's a protest song on here, Bring on the Lucy, where he makes a line, what is it? While you're jerking off each other, starting to bring a little bit of anger. But again, it ultimately, I don't know, comes across as a little sanitized. Probably the weirdest song on here is Meat City, which is this weird funky number towards the end of the album, if not the very last song. Yeah, but I don't know. It again, I don't know, man. Yeah, so a good album, but definitely not a great album. I think the title track is possibly the best thing on here. And the bass in the title track is ridiculous. That's the one thing about this album and the last album. The bass playing is pretty good. Like that's the one instrument that seems to like stand out and like salvage a lot of like some of the more forgettable moments. But yeah, I'm not a big fan of this album, but it's competent. But I definitely don't think it's very inspired. All right, on to number two. Number two, Imagine. This is a great album, just flat out great album. Came out in 1971. Um, Title track, I mean, I never ever in my life need to hear the song Imagine again, but it needed to be written at some point in time. And John Lennon wrote it. Like, talk about a near perfect song, right? Like, I don't have to go on about that. If you don't like the song Imagine, like, yeah, you might never want to hear it again, but if you can't respect what he accomplished in that song, you have no heart. Your heart is three sizes too small. So, um, but it's not the only great song on this album. The absolutely vicious "How Do You Sleep," an attack on McCartney, apparently, a bunch of Beatles references in there. Is just is a pretty angry song, almost like a little too late. Like, why are we still harping on this? I guess it's only been a year or so. But again, it works. The album closing, "Oh Yoko," is this breezy, joyful little like George Harrison type pop number that is absolutely fantastic. Jealous Guy, Pusha T recently sampled someone else's cover of Jealous Guy quite heavily on his new album. It is a really, really good one. Pusha T's new album is fantastic, but the use of Jealous Guy is fantastic. Um, I Don't Want to Be a Soldier is a weird little kind of a weird production type thing that maybe doesn't work quite as well as it should, but it's interesting. There's some great organ work throughout this thing. I think How Do You Sleep is the one that is the really good like organ that almost is like a callback to Billy Preston. Again, making a maybe Billy Preston's on this album. I actually don't know. I doubt it. But also making it a more of a Beatles theme song. But yeah, it's a Crippled Inside has the second song on the album, which follows Imagine, almost has a Rolling Stones countryish back porch jam type vibe to it. It's just a really good album. Give Me Some Truth. Just talk about Give Me Money for Dope. Just a really good hard hitting song. Yeah, a phenomenal album, man. How Kind of evokes the little long and winding road imagery, which is pretty funny because the song that precedes How is the one where he attacks McCartney, and the next one clearly almost seems to lift the melody from Long and Winding Road at one point. So that's interesting. Maybe that was on purpose. Maybe that was a way of like saying, "Hey, buddy, it's all good." I don't know, but this is a great album. Definitely not as great as the one that was made before it. So we're already slipping a little bit, but this is a really good album. Yeah, no complaints here. Number two, Imagine. Number one, John Lennon slash Plastic Ono Band, his officially solo debut album. Perfect album. Very basic band. For the most part, you have drums, bass player, some percussion. Every once in a while, you get other instruments that seep in. Piano. I said piano, not percussion. So it has a very direct, like it almost seems like you're sitting in the room hearing these people play these songs in real time. So many of these songs are purely driven by whatever John Lennon's going through. Like there are songs about his mother, there are songs about his dad, there are songs about the Beatles. Like he references himself all the time and is talking to John. Like this is an open, honest, like just cathartic album for Lennon, and it translates to incredibly powerful music. I was This is the album that has Isolation on it. The reason I'm doing this video closes outside one, and it's just like isolation. Like it's what you want to scream when you're in isolation. Like he captures whatever these feelings are so perfectly well. So maybe I related to this album because this was the only one I went back and re-listened to. Because I wanted to like make sure when I praise this, my praise was as worthy as it should be. And this is a fantastic album, but it is just raw. It opens up with Mother, which is just him like getting out it's a cathartic, it's like almost like a primal scream song about his mother. Working Class Hero is his sort of angry revolutionary politics at its very best, and it's just pretty much him and an acoustic guitar. So powerful. Isolation. Love is an absolutely beautiful, delicate, just perfect little love song. And then God, which is his declaration of like, I don't believe in, I don't believe in, I don't believe in, I just believe in. And there is a multiverse out there in which this is the only album he puts out, and he doesn't put that My Mummy's Dead nonsense. There's like a short little song at the end that follows Beatlesque Abbey Road style. But if he had ended with God and was like, the dream is over, and then never made another piece of music again, man, that would have been the greatest mic drop ever. But yeah, this is a perfect album, man. It's just straightforward singer songwriter catharsis, John Lennon style, just perfect music. Yeah, number one, John Lennon, Plastic Ono Band. That's it for the John Lennon albums. The five is the covers album. Someday I'm gonna get around to the Lennon Yoko albums, and then Yoko Ono herself. I am a big Yoko Ono fan, so I have a lot to say about her. Not sure anybody else will care. But who knows, one day. But anyways, thanks for watching. I got 2 more days stuck in these 2 rooms, so who knows what will happen. But subscribe, like, comment, let me know what you think about Lennon, any and all of that stuff. And yeah, and if you don't know how there's a Zappa connection, they played together at the Fillmore. Zappa's covered a bunch of Beatles songs, all that kind of stuff. Anyways, there's lots of connections. All right, peace, bye.